Welcome to our 2025 Academic Indicator presentation from the Accountability, Development, and Policy Analysis Unit here at the California Department of Education. My name is Katrina Gonzalez, and I will be co-presenting with Michael Ishimoto. Today's session will be covering an in-depth review of the academic indicators, and then we'll cover a few reminders about the dashboard in general. For the 2025 dashboard, the California Department of Education has posted a series of on-demand presentations, which are short, accessible videos that can be accessed at any time and will cover each of the state indicators in more detail. Today's agenda includes where to find an overview of the California School Dashboard. Then we will cover all things English Language Arts and Mathematics, including what's new for 2025. Followed by the participation rate for the academic indicators before moving on to a few frequently asked questions. And finally, how to go about contacting or reaching us with any and all of your dashboard questions. For an overview of the dashboard, the CDE has created the Dashboard 101 on demand. There, you will gain a clear overview of the dashboard, including detailed explanations of state and local measures, performance levels, and general rules about the dashboard. You can find a link to the Dashboard 101 on demand in your note-taking guide. The dashboard is full of information. Some of it is used for accountability purposes, while some is used for informational purposes only. Some information you may see on the dashboard for informational purposes only includes the Report for Disaggregated English Learner Academic Performance, which reports academic performance of current English learners, recently reclassified English learners, and English-only students. Also, for informational purposes only in 2025, we have growth data for ELA and math, the science indicator, and the Dashboard Alternative School Status, or DAS, one-year graduation rate. Next, I'll turn it over to Michael to talk about the specifics of the academic indicator. Michael?
Thank you, Katrina. Let's jump into the academic indicator. So, what are the academic indicators? The academic indicators contain two measures, English Language Arts, or ELA, and Mathematics. They are based on the student performance on the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments, or California Alternate Assessments, or CAA. These are summative assessments that are administered every spring in grades 3 through 8 and grade 11. These assessments show how well students are meeting grade level standards. Student scores are only included in the academic indicator if the student is continuously enrolled. But what is continuous enrollment exactly? We use a lot of terms in accountability around enrollment, so let's clarify what we mean here. While cumulative enrollment is enrollment at any time during the year, continuous enrollment is defined as the enrollment from Fall Census Day or the first Wednesday in October through the time of testing without a gap in enrollment of more than 30 consecutive calendar days. So if a student has a gap in enrollment of 45 consecutive days in the middle of the year, their assessment score would not be included in the academic indicators. Keep in mind that this does not mean that they are not expected to test. We'll get into participation rate and expectations to test a little later in the presentation. Since the academic indicators are a little different from the other indicators and isn't self-reported, many people want to know, where does the data come from? The Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments and California Alternate Assessment results are received from the testing vendor ETS. We also extract data from the California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Data System, also known as CalPADS, to assist our calculations, specifically the demographic data to make student group determinations, enrollment data to determine which students are included in the participation rate, and enrollment data to determine continuous enrollment to calculate distance from standard. I just mentioned distance from standard in the past few slides, but let's back up a little and find out what is the distance from standard, or DFS. The DFS is used to determine the status for ELA and math. It is the distance between a student's score on the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments and the threshold for the standard met achievement level. In other words, It is the distance between the student score and the lowest threshold scale score for level 3. The scale score ranges for the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments vary by both content area and by grade level. The scale score levels and ranges for each grade can be found on the CASP website, which can be accessed through the note-taking guide. Now that we know what the DFS is, how is it calculated? It's best to explain the calculation in 3 simple steps. Step 1 is to calculate the DFS for each student. As I mentioned earlier, this means referencing the student scale score and measuring the distance to the bottom of level 3 for their grade level and subject. Next, in step 2, we calculate the average DFS for a school or district using all student DFS values. The average DFS will be used to determine the status level for a school, district, or student group. Step 3 is to calculate the change based on the difference in DFS from the prior year. The average DFS and the change from the prior year for each assessment is used to determine the performance level or color. But what about those students who take the California Alternate Assessment? How do we calculate their DFS? For the CAA scores, a crosswalk was created to convert levels of the CAA to correspond with levels on the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments using a top-of-the-range approach. This is quite simple, really. For levels 1 through 3 on the CAA, a student's score would be substituted with the top score point of the same Smarter Balanced achievement level. All CAA assessment results will be converted to one of 3 scale scores for each grade in each content area. So, for example, if a CAA score is in level 2 for ELA, their Smarter Balanced score would be the top score for level 2 for ELA. There is a link in your note-taking guide to the levels and ranges for each grade on the CAA to aid in this conversion. This newly converted Smarter Balanced Summative Assessment score will be used to calculate the DFS for those students taking the CAA. Let's review how we calculate performance level for status. Status is the current year's assessment average points and will fall into one of 5 status levels: very high, high, medium, low, and very low. To calculate performance level for change, we compare current and prior year data to determine how a school or district's DFS has changed. The change levels are increased significantly, increased, maintained, declined, and declined significantly. A 5x5 table is used to determine the performance level and color for the academic indicator. The top row of the table represents change from the prior year: declined significantly, declined, maintained, increased, and increased significantly. And the first column represents status in the current year, going from very high, high, medium, low, and very low. The intersection of status and change is used to determine the final performance level or color for an LEA school and/or student group. In this example, the intersection of a status level of high and change level of increased leads to a green performance color. The specific academic indicator 5x5 tables with cut scores can be found in the note-taking guide. Each category for status and change is established through setting cut scores. The academic indicators have 2 different sets of cut scores for each subject. One applies to high school and high school districts, while the other applies to all other school and LEA types. This includes elementary, middle, transitional kindergarten through grade 12, and any others not labeled as high school. Since the 2022 dashboard, DAS-specific cut scores are no longer applied to the dashboard. DAS schools have the same cut scores applied as other schools with their school type. The final DFS, with participation rate rules applied, will be used to determine the status as well as the status level for the dashboard. Cut scores for the academic indicators can be accessed on the 2025 dashboard website, which is linked in the note-taking guide. Next, we want to go over what the ELA and math academic indicators will look like on the dashboard. A base dashboard card style graphic will be the first level of information available to schools and LEAs. This sample dashboard card represents results of a school or LEA's performance level or color on the dashboard along with the status and change from the prior year. There is an option to select the student group or compare it to the state student group results. In this first sample card, the Hispanic student group is selected and displays a green performance level or color with the gauge pointing to the green color and the green along the top border. The card shows a distance from standard or DFS of 3.5 points above standard and a change of maintained 1 point from the prior year. The number of students or N size is 58. A dashboard card will look different depending on the size of the denominator. If an LEA school or student group has a small denominator between 11 to 29 students in the current or prior year, then only the distance from standard and change from the prior year is reported. In this sample card, the 2 or more races student group is selected and displays no performance color with a grayed out gauge and a DFS of 31.2 points above standard. It also reports a decline of 4.7 points from the prior year. The number of students or N size is 23. There is an option to select the student group or compare it to the state student group results. And a very small denominator, fewer than 11 students in the current or prior year, will have no data reported on the dashboard to protect students' privacy. In this final sample card, the homeless student group is selected and displays no performance level, a grayed out gauge, and no data on distance from standard or change. The number of students or N size is 8. Similar to the other cards, there is an option to select the student group or compare it to the state student group results. Additional information is displayed for the academic indicators within the additional student group report. As we covered in the last slide, the View More Details link provides more specific student group data. The distance from standard is also reported for a few extra student groups. These are reported for informational purposes only, and they are not included or used in state or federal support determinations. No color performance level is assigned, however, the status and change from the prior year and the number of students are reported. These additional student group reports are available for current English learners, reclassified English learners, and English-only students. In the examples provided, the current English learners had a status of 106.7 below standard, maintained a number of points, and the number of students are listed. For reclassified English learners who have reclassified in the past 4 years, the status was 27.3 points below standard. Change shows that they maintained a number of points and the number of students is also shown. The English-only group scored 22.7 points below standard, and again, the data for change in the number of students is shown. For some definition, current English learners are only those students who are classified as EL and CalPADS. It does not include any of the students who have been reclassified. The reclassified English learners include students who have been reclassified for up to 4 years. And English only are the students who are not classified as either EL or reclassified EL. Based on California's Every Student Succeeds Act, or as a state plan, schools that only serve transitional kindergarten, grade 1 and/or grade 2, the non-tested grades, are required to receive a performance level on the academic indicator even though their students in these grades are not administered the ELA or mathematics assessment. The process of assigning DFS results to these schools is called pair and share. These schools are specifically assigned Grade 3 DFS, which includes results from both the Smarter Balanced summative assessments and the CAAs from the district, county, or up to 3 schools to which their students matriculate. Pair and share DFS is only reported for the all-student level. No additional student groups are reported. That covers the general information about the academic indicators on the 2025 dashboard. Katrina will now go over how we include the participation rate into the overall performance of LEAs, schools, and student groups.
Thank you, Michael. Now, there are a few things that affect the final DFS for a school or district. One of the biggest factors is the participation rate. Under the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, states must test at least 95% of their students. This requirement is applied for all schools, LEAs, and student groups and are calculated separately for each group. If they do not meet this target, California must assign the lowest obtainable scale score, or loss, to each missing student that is needed to bring the participation rate of the school, district, or student group up to 95%. For ELA, the assigned loss score is negative 333, or 333 points below standard. For mathematics, the assigned loss score is negative 348, or 348 points below standard. The loss is assigned to the number of students needed to bring the participation rate up to 95% and will be used in calculating the average DFS. In order to calculate the participation rate, we apply the participation rate formula, where the numerator is the number of tested students, which is divided by the denominator, the number of students enrolled during the accountability testing window. In order for a student to count as tested, they must log on to both the Computer Adaptive Test, the CAT, and the Performance Task, the PT, portions of the assessment. The student does not need to complete the entire assessment. However, their scores will be included in the average DFS calculation, even if it isn't reflective of the score they would have achieved if they had finished the assessment. If not enough questions were answered and there is no score generated, an assigned loss for their grade level will be applied. The denominator represents those students enrolled during the accountability testing window. Many rules are applied to determine if a student is considered enrolled at the school or LEA. Keep in mind that the participation rate rules and denominator will be different from those used to calculate the average DFS. For more information about the participation rate, please visit the link to the participation rate flyer provided in the note-taking guide. There are a few exemptions for special cases such as medical emergencies and newly enrolled EL students who take the ELA assessment, where these students are not expected to test. Students who miss school due to illness without a medical emergency flag or have a parent opt them out of testing are still included in the participation rate denominator. There are grace periods applied for students entering or exiting the school during the testing window applied according to the length of the LEA selected testing window. Determining a school's accountability testing window is one of the first steps taken to finalize the participation rate denominator. Although LEAs set their own testing window for the Smarter Balance summative assessments and the CAA in the TOMS Test Administration Setup module, for dashboard accountability purposes, the CDE determines what is called an accountability testing window for each school and LEA. The accountability testing window for the dashboard starts when the first student at the school takes the test. Depending on the length of the LEA selected testing window, grace periods may be applied as well. Grace periods were developed to apply to certain students who transfer in and out around the testing start and end dates, and to hold schools harmless on the accountability measures when there is inadequate time to administer the assessments. They are applied before and after accountability testing window according to the length of the LEA selected test window. If the LEA selected testing window is 14 days or less, there is no grace period applied. If the LEA selected test window is between 15 and 30 days, one grace period is applied at the end of the window. Students enrolling in the school during the grace period at the end of the testing window are not expected to test. If the LEA selected testing window is 31 or more days, 2 grace periods are applied. One grace period is applied at the beginning of the window for students exiting the school at the beginning of the window, and one grace period at the end of the window for students enrolling in the school at the end of the testing window. For some LEAs, many students are entering or exiting their school during the testing window, and it can be very difficult to determine which students should or should not be tested. For accountability purposes, we've simplified the participation rate a bit to hopefully clarify any confusion. Students that transfer in or out of a school are expected to test if they are enrolled for at least one day during the accountability testing window. Before we close out our review of the academic indicators, we wanted to review a few frequently asked questions, or FAQs, that we've received. Will we be resetting DFS cut scores for the 2025 dashboard? No. There were no changes made to either the status or change cut scores for the academic indicators on the 2025 dashboard. Why are the CAST reports not matching the results of the dashboard? The CASP reporting webpage and the dashboard are reporting results from the spring summative CASP testing. However, they do have a number of differences that will often not match. The CASP reports most student demographics based on data at the close of testing. However, the dashboard looks at the student demographics based on the CalPADS EOY submissions. The CASP results are based on achievement levels and includes all tested students. The dashboard results are based on a combination of participation rate and distance from standard and may remove some test scores due to the business rules applied. The CASP webpage reports those taking the alternative assessments separately from those taking the Smarter Balanced assessments, while the dashboard combines these results into one average distance from standard. The CASP reports the number of students tested, while the dashboard includes student scores only for those continuously enrolled. And finally, the District of Residence rules are applied to LEAs, which is unique to the dashboard. If my newcomer EL student took the ELA test on accident, will it still be used in my DFS calculation? EL students who have been enrolled in a U.S. school for less than 1 year are exempt from taking the ELA portion of the Smarter Balanced summative assessments and the CAA. For accountability purposes, any EL newcomer who enrolled in a U.S. school after April 15, 2024 will automatically be removed from the calculation of the ELA participation rate, even if the student opted to take one or both parts of the ELA assessment. These students will not be included in the participation rate or the DFS calculations. A student left my school before the testing window opened, but they are still showing up in the Test Operations Management System, or TOMS. Will this affect my participation rate? Many of our LEAs want to track their participation rate in real time, with the goal of testing 100% of their students. The only tool the LEAs have to track their testing is through the TOMS completion reports. Unfortunately, these reports are not the same as the participation rate reports. TOMS is a great tool for looking at real-time testing rates within a school or LEA. However, the dashboard does not use the same inclusion or exclusion rules for the participation rate calculation. The CDE does not actually receive the testing data until the fall, after testing has been completed, and LEAs cannot do anything to increase their testing rates. To answer the question more directly, students remain in TOMS at their last known CalPADS school. Therefore, if a student never enrolled in another California school, they will appear as needing to test in TOMS. Since these students left before the testing window opened, they will not be included in the numerator or the denominator of the participation rate on the dashboard. I'm going to pass it over to Michael now to cover the remaining FAQs. Michael, take it away.
Thank you again. A student left in the middle of testing but did not start any of the assessments. Will I be held accountable for their test? If the student is expected to test and did not test, the school and LEA will be held accountable for their student not testing. If the student falls under any of the exemptions, including grace periods, and is not expected to test, the school and LEA will not be held accountable for the student not testing. A student left my school during the LEA selected testing window, but before we tested any students. Will they affect my participation rate? No. Students that exit the school before testing has begun are not expected to test and will not be included in either the numerator or the denominator of the participation rate. Last question. Will the California growth scores replace distance from standard for the academic indicators? No. At this time, growth data are not part of the academic indicators. Action would need to be taken by the State Board of Education to add growth scores to the academic indicator or change any current academic measures on the California School Dashboard. Now I'll pass it back to Katrina to cover additional resources related to the academic indicators.
Thank you, Michael. This was our quick recap of the academic indicators. If you need additional help with the academic indicators, we have a few different resources available for you. All of the links are in the note-taking guide. First, we have our California Department of Education Academic Indicators webpage. This will be your go-to for any questions you might have about how rules are applied or examples. It contains links to everything technical and simplified, including a link to our technical guide. Starting in 2022, the technical guide has been broken up into mini guides to make information more digestible. There's an entire mini guide dedicated to all things academic indicators, including participation rate, DFS, and how to get a color on the dashboard. Finally, we have the additional reports webpage. After the dashboard has been publicly released, the data will be updated for the 2025 dashboard. The academic indicator data reports will give you more information that is not available on the dashboard. This additional information can be found in the ELA report, the math report, and the academic participation rate report. If you are interested in contacting us regarding any of the information we covered about the California School Dashboard, we are just an email away. Our email address is dashboard@cde.ca.gov. We also invite you to follow us on X @CDE Dashboard. Thank you for watching this on-demand video about the academic indicators. Again, please contact us if you have any additional questions. Thank you.